That's good.
Hello and welcome. My name is Stephanie Benedetto, and I'm happy to welcome you to the Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, or 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that is committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles, as introduced by Sydney Banks, to people throughout the world. And today I am very privileged to introduce our guest, Lori Carpenos, and she's going to be talking about being single and really happy, not just okay, but really happy. And Lori was actually privileged to meet Sydney Banks in 1985. Her life changed, as happens for many of us when we encounter the three principles sooner or later. And she maintains a private practice in West Hartford, Connecticut, as a therapist, life coach, business consultant, facilitator, and writer. She told me about two programs that she's running. One, they both sound fascinating. One is called Creating Miraculous Relationships, and that's usually for couples, but open to anyone at all who would like to create a miraculous relationship. And also a program called Finding Deep Connections, originally meant for single people, but now opening up to the world because I want more deeper connections too, regardless of my relationship status. So Lori, thank you so much for being here. And please, without further ado, take it away.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. Great having our little chat before we started today. I'm so happy to meet you. And I'm so happy to meet the rest of you also on the call. This is why I do this from time to time, because it keeps me in touch with new people coming into 3PGC. And every so often we get, people who have been around for a while. So, yeah, and I like to do this pretty interactive. I'm just going to start out with, just giving you a little bit about what happened for me that I think you'll all be able to relate to on some level. And then, anytime we're a small group, because we've got big competition today, the massive UK conference that's going on. So I'm sure people will be joining that and then perhaps listening to the recording we do today. So I just want to start out by saying that, let's see where to start. The most important points I want to make for you today is that when we see something as an insight, it deepens as long as you are interested, and just by virtue of the fact that you're here, or the people who are taking time to listen to the recording, you're already interested in seeing more for yourself, understanding more, being open to more love in your life. So that's the main thing, is looking in this direction. When I say this direction, I mean this direction of our spiritual nature, which is what Sydney Banks spoke about long before we realized that that's what he was speaking about. When I first came into it in 1985, I was hearing it from a psychological perspective. And it took me a while. And in fact, back then, this is really interesting, we all shied away from using the word spiritual. Can you believe that? I mean, because there were a lot of thoughts about what that meant, that it meant something to do with a new age community, or, so we, would read our audience, and by the questions they asked or the things they would say, we realized probably not the right time to talk about spiritual, and the fact that that's who we all are. We are all made of spiritual essence, having whatever time we're having in human form, in a form called Earth, the globe, wherever we are geographically. But where we are mentally is the real deal, our state of mind, what our feeling state is. And the reason I wanted to talk about being single, which applies to whatever your big deal is, that happened to be my big deal. I had this big thing about thinking in my perspective, my idea, not realizing it was my idea at the time. I thought it was life, that the reason I'm on planet Earth is to be a wife and a mother. And the wife happened, for less than 10 years, and the mother didn't happen. That did not happen. And that was actually my first big insight, because my world changed. And that's how I've come to see that. I know I've had a big insight when my world changes, when I see things differently. And some of you who've heard me on other webinars probably heard me say that the first Sid Banks lecture I sat in, which was in Florida in 1985, it felt to me like the weight of the world was lifted off my shoulders. What I heard had something to do with the fact that it's not all up to me. It's not on me to make what I think I'm supposed to have in life. I'm not the one in control, Now, I have free will so that I can decide if I like what's happening, or if I want to look for what I like in what is happening, right? Like, as long as I was looking at what I like and what I don't like, that's being in a state of judgment, as though what I like and what I don't like is reality. But it's not, because the things that I like one day are not necessarily the things that I like another day. Some days I love being on my own, doing what I want to do in the moment. If it's a weekend, I don't have a schedule to see clients, then I love that. But I could do that if I'm in a relationship also. And there are times that I love to be with friends, and that doesn't always happen because my timing doesn't match up with their timing. That doesn't matter either, because that will last. My disappointment, my sorrow, my upset, my wanting something that isn't happening will last about, now it lasts about a millisecond, to tell you the truth. It used to last longer, but the more I've looked in the direction of our spiritual nature, which is what I began talking about, the more I see that I don't need to stay in any negative state of mind any longer than I was about to say is necessary. I mean, it's never necessary to stay in a negative state of mind any longer than until I wake up to the fact that I'm in this negative state. And then when I realize that, it's like, okay, no big deal, no big deal. And then I'm on to something else, and before I know it, the negative state is gone. But as long as I saw it as a big deal, I would bring in other thinking about it. I would hang on to it, pulling it apart, trying to figure it out, hang on to thinking about it. For what purpose? There's no reason to think about something that struck us as a negative or not so great. You know, like we all have our preferences in life, right? And our preferences change, you know, whether you like chocolate or vanilla, whether you like this healthy diet or a different healthy diet, you know, whether you like this sort of exercise or a different exercise, whether you like being coupled or single. But all of that, whatever our preferences are, comes down to one relationship, and that's the relationship we have with our own thinking. So it doesn't matter. So nothing is really the big deal that we make it out to be. And anybody who's on the call right now, I'm sure you can point to something that either had been a big deal to you until you saw something deeper about it, or something that you're still thinking is a pretty big deal. Like you really wish that whatever this big deal is, that it could be taken away, that you'd get something different at some point. You might get something different, but that's not what matters. What matters is the state of mind you're in. So if you're thinking about something as negative, your state of mind is not going to be great, right? But if you're looking in the direction of gratitude, what you're grateful for, your state of mind is going to be a heck of a lot better. And nobody's in a great state of mind all the time. Nobody is. Sid Banks wasn't in a great state of mind 24/7. More than most of us, but he had his moments. The difference is knowing that it's just a moment. And if you don't feed it and you don't look for reasons and try to fix it and try to do something about it, you're in a different state in a moment. Sometimes it just takes a moment. And it's like when you're not looking at what you don't like, you get pulled into something else. A new thought comes out of the blue, out of nowhere. So that's what I found has been really incredible. You know, before I got to this level, and I know that there's more to see because it keeps deepening. You know, it's a feeling of evolving. You continue to see more as you're looking in the direction of your spiritual nature. Before thought, what is there before your thinking contaminates a peaceful state? That's the direction to be curious about, to be interested in. So, you know, but before I saw this at all, before I met Sid Banks, I was pretty miserable, thinking that there was something wrong with me. I wasn't doing something right, you know, going to friends' weddings or meeting their boyfriends, what have you. My guy friends meeting their girlfriends, you know, whatever. I thought, wow, there's got to be something wrong with me. And that was my big deal. That was my swan song, you might call it. So, you know, and even as things lightened up for me, I still had some shame and guilt going on. Like I can remember talking with my father. My mother had already passed away, and then my father was not doing very well later in his life. And I said to him, gee, I am so sorry that I never gave you a grandchild. And he didn't even blink. Out of his mouth came, well, what made you think that I expected you to give me a grandchild? He said, I just want you to be happy. Now, in my mind, that never occurred to me, but that was first, it just came right out of his mouth. He didn't even have to think about it. He didn't even have to think about a response because it was so right there for him. So I was making up all that stuff that I should be giving my father a grandchild. Didn't get to give my mother that. I should be doing this. I should be doing that. This is how society works. This is what's normal. And then I would have clients and many would tell me that, oh, they don't want to be a parent for one reason or another that they had. That was their thinking, bringing them that. I had other people who did not want to be a parent and wound up being a parent and found it quite joyful. And other people who were parents and found it very difficult, very difficult. So we never know what life will bring us. But there's one thing, if I didn't learn anything else from Sid, and I only learned that, there is one thing that we can always depend upon, and that is universal wisdom. And, I know if you're involved in the three principles, you've heard these terms used to describe what's behind all of life. Mind, principle of mind with a capital M. Wisdom, which always comes wrapped in a beautiful feeling. And that's why Sid would say, look for a beautiful feeling. Look for a nice feeling, because that's where you will hear wisdom. Now, in retrospect, people have said, holy cow, wisdom was speaking to me, but I let my personal thinking, my brain, my intellect override the intelligence that was speaking to me all along. I'm curious if any of you have had that experience. And in fact, I think this is a good time to check in with you and see what questions you have, what insights you've had, not, just from the last 20 minutes or so, but in your life, since you've been exposed to the three principles, what has happened for you? I'd really like to hear from you. I mean, I could keep going, but questions are always good too.
Cool. So I'm going to invite you to ask those questions as you're listening to Lori, as you're thinking about this, like what's coming up for you. We're an intimate group, so you can just go ahead and unmute and ask your question or share your experience.
Yeah, shares are really good too. You don't have to tell us, although you can, what your big deal is or how your big deal changed. It's interesting.
Yeah, I can go. Good morning. I'm in Australia, so it's early for me.
Australia. What
yeah,
time
the three principles is relative. What was that?
What time is it there?
It's 4 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow. Wow. Wonderful that you are with us in the
Yeah, I'm
week.
very interested in how this applies. I've been kind of developing my spiritual awareness for a couple of years, but haven't had this perspective kind of that three principles offers. I'm at the age where all my friends are having kids, getting married, and it's a story that I can't see as thought. So I guess even like I've already heard some of the things you're saying and how we're not sort of in control at all and trusting the wisdom. But it still seems so real that like I'm not in the same situation.
Oh, so nice to meet somebody halfway across the globe who has the experience that I had. Yeah. Yeah. So you're getting a little glimmer that it's thought, but boy, it sure looks real. Compliments of consciousness, the other principle, right? We're aware of what we think, and that's what makes it look so real. But it's not real. Because reality is always changing. Our personal reality is always changing. Like you're not thinking about your friends getting married and you're not, and you can't find the right person, and you're not thinking about that 24/7. But when you are thinking about it because you have judgment about it, you're not going to feel in tip-top shape. So, I can tell you my experience is that it changed over time. It evolved over time. I still get moments where I feel lonely and I really wish that there was a significant other in my life. I've got something I want to share and I'm thinking about the people in my life, and it's not something I'd want to share with somebody who's just a friend. I want to share with somebody who's really, really in my court, do some pillow talk, And then you know what? Here's what just came to me. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that feeling of longing, desire, because that's a gift. That's a gift that we as humans get to have that feeling. Now, does it have to be satisfied right in this moment? And even if you were with your significant other, it would only be as satisfied as your thinking allowed it to be. Right? I mean, the relationships I've had in the past, the significant other relationships I've had in the past, I could be telling that person something that is so powerful and so meaningful to me that kind of falls on his deaf ears, so to speak. He's not really there with me. So, I also learned about expectation, not only about, the downfall of having expectation of having the right kind of person in my life as my significant other, but also the expectation I place on whoever is in my life at the time. Because, and I cannot stress this enough, there's one significant relationship throughout our life from birth to death. And that's the relationship we have with our own thinking. Because that's all we have. That's all we have. Haven't you been in a conversation with somebody? You may love that person, but your mind goes somewhere else, or their mind goes somewhere else, and you could feel like they're not really listening. Well, that happens for everybody. It could be as simple as, gee, I'm hungry. I wonder what's for dinner. It could be as simple as that. But the minute you're thinking any personal thought, you're not in alignment with that other person, or they're not in alignment with you. And there's no judgment about that, because that's how we work as humans. We get distracted really easily. And the good news about that is we get distracted from our own negative thinking really easily too, if we allow it to happen. It's really an allowance, having that allowance. Yeah.
I would
So
share one more thing if it is okay.
great, Dominic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said
Hi.
your name right. Dominique?
Yeah, it's right. And I'm in Germany, so it's 8:45. So all over the world, different time. Yeah, for me, it's so interesting since that something happened with Sydney Banks and Three Ps. It's like that I got this feeling, the connection with God that I had never ever have been before with the person. And now when I'm with some other guys or girls, it's like I'm searching for the connection, it's like, oh my God, it's a downgrade. It's like the feeling is not the same for me than with, it's like, it's so, what? Where's the connection? It's not there, because you said it, the people are always distracted and I can feel it. They're on the phone, they're thinking, they're somewhere else. And this is not the straight relationship with God. It's like, how can I be in a relationship in the next 20 years? Because it's never be the same. It's like, wow, what is it? Will I be single the next 25 years and just, I don't know, a nun or something like this? I don't know if you understand this feeling, but yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful, right? I think we can all relate to that you get into this really beautiful feeling listening to Sid, or just for no reason whatsoever, but you've been exposed to this beautiful feeling, so it happens more often. And then sometimes you get with somebody who you might love the person, but they're complaining about their lives, and then your spirit starts to drop, kind of matching theirs, And the trick is knowing that they're in their thinking. In this moment, they're in their thinking, and you can still stay in a loving feeling. Love, understanding, compassion. They may or may not pick up on it. That's not your job. It's not even your job to stay in a loving, compassionate, understanding feeling. But we all love that feeling. And so we gravitate to that more often. That's beautiful. Once you have a taste of that space, you don't want to leave it.
Yeah.
And,
that's right.
nobody's there 24/7. Nobody's there 24/7. But you can always go back there.
Yeah.
You leave it, you get bummed out for a bit, but that you can always get back there. Maybe not right away, but just knowing that that's there for you. When you get quiet enough, no pressure. I found that trying to get to a quiet place is not going to get me there. Just loving that quiet space, that gets you there quicker, more often. It's been my experience. What about the rest of you? Have you found that?
Nein, gesprochen.
Do you find that, Stephanie? You probably have been around the principles, besides me, the longest, I think, of everybody on the call. I don't know. How long have you been-
No, I think I came across the three principles maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your question was, will you ask it of me again? And I'll answer.
If you have found that even when you're out of sorts, when you're not in the best state, that there's a better state for you. And that you'll get back there. It's like a kind of a level of confidence that you've been there once, twice, 100 times. And so you know that that quiet place, devoid of judgment, devoid of expectation, you're not even judging yourself. Oh my gosh, that is just such a place of rest where you're not caring. And I mean that in a beautiful way, not caring about the things that bring you down, right? Like when we get caught up in caring about the things that bring us down, it doesn't help. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help anybody else in the world, you know? So I really like this idea of not caring that we're single, or right now we're in a relationship with somebody who's presenting themselves as being pretty difficult. You know, because life is moment to moment. It's not like, well, I'm with somebody who's pretty difficult, that means they're difficult 24/7. No, they're difficult when they're in a bad state. In those moments when you look at life as moment to moment, it's like a different experience then. It's not a chunk of, oh my gosh, I've been single this many years. Does that mean I'm going to be single this many more years? You know, we don't know. We don't know who's going to cross our path when. We don't know. I mean, things change. Often when we least expect them to. Right? Things are always changing. So I guess that was a long-winded answer to Stephanie's question, but like, do you find that you tend to get back to those quiet spaces quicker, more easily now that you've, you know, like yeah. How do you experience that, Stephanie?
So it's funny because if I try to, like you're saying, if I try to feel better, if I try, I'm pushing away the experience I'm actually having, and it's like glue. It really doesn't work. If I just am with what's happening, there's a space that opens up at some point, sometimes sooner, sometimes it takes a little while because I'm really thinking it. I'm thinking it. I'm overthinking it. I'm going round and round. But at some point, there's a space that opens up that says, hey, you could stop thinking this now. And the other day, I was having a rough time. I was just in a position where I didn't feel like I had much energy for anything. And I knew it was going to shift. Man, did I want it to shift now, and it wasn't. So I just kind of hung out there and did what I knew to do. I watched something silly on Netflix and, you know, just to distract myself a little, which sometimes feels good. And after that, I said, you know, I feel like I need to go to the beach. I need to walk on the beach. I live really close to the beach, and I went to the beach. And I walked for a while, and I listened to a podcast. It's called Under the Noise with Win Morgan and Kate Roberts. And it's my favorite podcast. And they're both friends of mine, and I love them. And they were talking about essentially how the present moment is this reset button that at any moment, or like they're talking about as an Etch-a-Sketch, you know, the Etch-a-Sketch that you could have the little knobs and you draw a picture. And then as soon as you're done with the picture, you shake it and it's gone. Like that is available at any moment. And something in that conversation, I was like, yeah, I could do that right now. And somewhere in there, I ended up running on the beach, and then after something shifted, and it shifted pretty dramatically. And I still wouldn't say I was like in the best state of mind of my whole life, but it was lifted. It was so much better. And then next morning, it was like a whole other world. So yeah, it does. I notice it. I think I used to just think the world was like that. The world was scary in my case. People, like I couldn't really trust people, but I couldn't trust myself. And I thought that was true. And I had these things in me that I needed to fix. And once I fixed them, it would look better. I would be okay again. And now I know I just have to hang out a little while. And it's going to go on its own.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, we never know. Just allowing the moment, just being in the moment, whatever it is, without judgment, without needing that moment to be any different. What a difference that makes, right? Your story reminded me of a story I think I told on another webinar not too long ago. But so if you heard it already, sorry. Maybe it'll come out a little different this time. Oh, my memory is waking up on Thanksgiving, which Thanksgiving in the United States, that's like a big deal. It's when people get together with families, right? That and Christmas, I think those are the two biggest family get-together holidays. So I wake up alone and it is dreary and dark and raining and I am miserable. All I'm thinking about is I can't believe it's Thanksgiving and I have nowhere to go. And my relatives that I usually go to, they were out of town at their in-laws, blah, blah, blah. So I am just doing my pity party like you would not believe. And it wasn't that many years ago. So maybe 2 years ago. It was also during COVID. That's why it was really, oh my gosh. So I decide, similar to you, Stephanie, going for a walk on the beach, I just said I'm going to go for a walk in my local park. I get there, it's like ghost town. It's ghost town. Nobody is there. Usually this place is teeming with activity. There's basketball courts and tennis courts and pickleball courts and little league fields. And there's like a little playground. Nothing. It was like Armageddon. It's like, oh my gosh, if you want to feel even more miserable, Lori, this was the place for you. The next moment, I have this idea, holy cow, I've got my phone. I'm going to take a recording of this. I will never see this park like this again. That was my next thought. And my spirits were like, this is so cool. And then I saw a couple walking and I saw somebody else, I mean, it was raining, it was overcast, it was gloomy. And then this one thought out of the blue, get out your phone, take a movie. You're never going to see it like this again. This is a once in a lifetime happening, most likely. And I was in heaven. Isn't that interesting how quickly, moment to moment, things can shift? And I'm so glad you brought that up, Stephanie. It's not a matter of trying to make it shift, because you won't believe yourself for an instant. Did any of you watch the old Saturday Night Lives? There was somebody who called himself Dr. Smiley. I'm pretty sure Dr. Smiley or something really silly like this. And he would use positive thinking. There's another word for it, where you tell yourself stories, right? There's a word for that, a phrase. I can't think of it right now. Affirmations, that's what it is. So he would give himself affirmations like, he's really sad, but he's saying, you're a good person. You do the right thing. You're a good person. And then he'd start crying his eyes out. He said, I don't believe any of that. It's really a funny skit that we could all relate to, intentionally making something up doesn't cut it. even though we're always making stuff up, it's not intentional. We're creating with the ability to create through thought and consciousness, and of course, mind gives us that ability to create our experience in every moment. But we can't blame ourselves because we're creating stuff, like I think of it like an artist. How many artists paint something, they make what they call a mistake, and that mistake leads to something even more beautiful. Or a potter at the wheel, and something happens and the whole thing collapses and they start all over again and they make an even more beautiful piece of pottery. So it's a matter of having faith that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. And I mean, I just don't have a way to explain that other than it's just evident to me. If I was supposed to be somewhere else, I'd be somewhere else. And it's all perfect. I would not want to, if I was in a marriage, from 1985 on, unless I learned enough, it would not be good. Would not be good because I was not a happy camper. When I say unless I learned enough about our spiritual nature, the principles, what Sid Banks uncovered. If I didn't know about that, I would be either divorced, maybe I would have hung in there longer than I should have. It would not have been good. So I am just, whatever happens to me, for me, I'm just so grateful to have this understanding, whatever level my understanding is at currently, because I know it just always deepens. So it's like we always have something to look forward to. And it's great that you're availing yourself the opportunity to get on these webinars, and there's just so much in 3PGC to immerse yourself in. Can't help but change your life and improve things for you. Yeah.
I'm just sitting here laughing. Well, I'm not actually laughing, but I'm thinking sometimes I leave my best friend's house and I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't imagine anything worse than having kids right now. And I think, like, I can see how when the thought comes in of like, maybe that won't happen to you, that is like, there's so much judgment around that thought as opposed to, oh my God, that was exhausting. I need to go home and have a rest from just being around kids. Like it really is moment to moment, and it's the judgment that we place on particular thoughts that do arise.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The judgment we place on the particular thoughts, thinking about our thinking can really do us in. Yeah. See, so you had a moment of gratitude. Oh man, I get to go home to quiet. I get to go home to peace and quiet. That's a thought of gratitude that just came from nowhere. Yeah, Sid would call gratitude penicillin for the soul. I love that. It's so true. Whenever it occurs to you to look in that direction. Yeah. Yeah, whatever you're grateful for. And sure, that really lights us up from inside. And everybody has things to be grateful for. It's really easy to get sucked into the rabbit hole of what's not going right. You know, because there's so much out in the world about what's wrong, what's not going right. And we don't have to follow that. We have free will. We don't have to go there. You know, we have to go there if we're helping with something. You know, let's say you're helping rescue animals, you're going to go to some negative places during that journey, and then go there and get out, meaning get out of the negative place in your head as fast as you can. Yeah. I love the metaphor that Dr. Bill Pettit uses for that. He talks about Jimmy Carter leading a group going into a nuclear power plant that needed to be fixed. There was something had broken down, and they could only be fully suited up. They could only be in that radioactive power plant for 10 minutes, I think, or maybe it was 9 minutes, something really short. Like they'd have enough time to turn a screw and get back out. And then the next guy fully suited would go in and do the next screw, whatever, you know, it was a long process. They could only be in there for 9 minutes before, you know, they would die from too much radiation. And Dr. Pettit uses that metaphor for the amount of time we should allow ourselves to be stressed out, as short as possible. Get in and get out. Yeah, I love that metaphor. You know, we don't realize how much suffering we put ourselves through needlessly. And it's not denial, because you're still going to be rescuing dogs or whatever you do. You just know that you're not going to be as good a dog rescuer if you're home crying about it and you're so upset and you're angry at people who mistreat animals. You know that you're not helping as long as you're immersed in that thinking. How are we doing for time? We've got another 10 minutes, right? 9-10 minutes, something.
Lori,
So,
I have a situation/question for you, because I mean, I may be the only person who's experienced this in a relationship, but I kind of suspect that I'm not. So I've had quite a few relationships, and sometimes I do this comparison thing. And I'm in a newer relationship now, and I find myself just getting more fired up than I'm accustomed to. I'm like, I want it to be his fault. I want it to be about him, but I kind of know it can't be, because sometimes he does the thing that triggers me and it doesn't bother me at all. And sometimes he does the thing and I'll go right off, and I catch myself as soon as I can. But so I'm seeing through this, but it still really looks like sometimes his behavior is making me feel this way, even though I know that can't be true. So maybe you could speak to that in a way that could help me to see a little bit deeper.
yeah. Well, I got a question for you before I speak to it, which is, what would you say is the common thing between when you know the answer before I even finish?
Yeah,
the
go
question.
ahead and ask the question. It's
When
perfect.
he triggers you and when he doesn't. What's the one commonality between when he's doing the same thing that doesn't trigger you one moment, that he does at another time that it does trigger you? everybody on the call knows the answer, right?
Well, no, I got to say it. I gotta say it. I'm in a bad mood when it triggers me. I'm already grumpy. I'm low. I'm like, "Grr." I might not even know it yet, but every time. Because if I'm in a good mood, it's like, oh, that's fun. That's so cute. Look at you. You're so cute.
Isn't that interesting? I'm so glad you brought that up. It's really great for everybody to hear that. You know, it's so interesting. The same thing we have a different reaction to because of our thinking about it. When we're in a nice mood, our level of consciousness is high enough, it kind of looks cute. That same thing that looks cute when we're not in the best mood looks terrible. And this is true for people who are in long-term relationships, because when you first get together with somebody, a lot looks cute that later on down the road does not look so cute anymore. But the only thing that has changed is your thinking about it, how you think about it, how you look at it. That's the only thing that ever changes. That to me is so interesting, that it's all on us. And I don't mean it as, you know, to judge yourself, but the feeling lets you know, not what's coming from the other person. It lets you know where you're at. So if you get triggered, guess what is the best anecdote? Look for a nicer feeling in yourself, within yourself. And if you keep thinking about what's triggering you, you're not going to get to a nicer feeling. That's not going to help you. Yeah, I mean, it's quite amazing what Sid brought into the world, isn't it? I mean, oh my gosh, it answers everything, everything. You can run anything at all through the three principles, and there's your answer right there. But pulling apart the details like we all used to do, and sometimes I know I still get caught up in it, you know, pulling apart the details and trying to piece it together and figure it out and understand it intellectually, that never works out. Why do we do that? So there's a few of you I've not heard from yet. I'd love to hear something from you, anything you'd like to share, or where your journey is with the principles, how you fell into this. Because I just think we're all so lucky, you know. It's by luck that, well, people say the principles find the right people. I don't know how it works. I just feel like I really lucked out. And by the way, it was my husband who introduced me to Sid Banks. Yeah. So, man, what a gift. What a gift. Wow, what a gift. Yeah, we were not meant for the long haul, that's for sure. But no question about that, you know. Yeah, but wow. See, we just never know what or who is going to lead us to something miraculous in our life. Any last minute question or something you'd like to say? I'd love to see you all. We're going to be doing 2 free weeks in the 2 courses that I do. The one is called, you know, and it's in the description. You can just click on it, and we're going to be running 2 free weeks for both of those. Yeah, I'd love to see you guys in there. Because it's really great to have people who have some background in the principles. Yeah. So one is called Creating Miraculous Relationships, and the other one is called Finding Deep Connection. Stephanie mentioned it at the beginning. Yeah. In Finding Deep Connection, I have some videos, webinars, one that I did with Christine Heath, and she talks about when she met her husband, she thought she was just out to watch like a racquetball tournament or something like that with a friend. She just met this guy friend, and she was quite surprised, quite taken aback when he went to kiss her. And she said, "Oh, you know," and this has been her long-term husband. And then Tom Kelly talks about how he had such a big ego when he was single. He'd walk into a room and just look for the pretty girls. He didn't care if they had anything interesting to say. He would just want the pretty girls. He's got a great story. He recently came out with a book called Psychology Has It Upside Down and Backwards. He did a lot of research with the three principles. Yeah. So I've got that webinar. He's in the book. Yeah, you'll know about the book, The Secret of Love, that I wrote with Christine. We've got his story in there. Yeah, it's been quite a journey. Anybody want to unmute and just let me know like how long you've been around the principles or anything like that? I'm always curious. Or where you are.
I'm
Mahmoud, where are you?
sorry.
Where are you?
I'm actually in the UK, United Kingdom.
You're in the UK, United
Yeah,
Kingdom.
in the UK. Yeah. I've been quite new to the three principles, actually, very new. So I heard about the three principles quite a few years ago, but I didn't really fully understand the principles at the time. And it was a book I was reading. It was an audiobook by Richard Carlson, you might have heard of.
Yeah. Yeah.
He actually, I think he used to be in he was at one time in the principles. I don't think he's no longer around, actually. I think he's passed away. But he apparently was a three principles person years back, and he wrote all these books on the three principles. But when I read the book, I didn't really realize it was the three principles. You know, I don't think he speaks too much about the principles, as in like I don't think he really mentions the three principles in the book. So I don't think I fully grasped it at the time. But I just remember the book being really powerful. I'm just thinking, wow, like him. I think he speaks about the three principles, but without saying it's the three principles. I don't. So there's probably a chapter on thought, a chapter on consciousness and mind, but I don't realize it was the three principles. But I remember thinking, wow, this book is amazing. Like, and I was going through like anxiety at the time and a bit of a low patch of depression and things like that. This was like about 10 years back when I read the book, and it was just like, wow, it left an impact on me. But then many years later, about 2 years ago, I came across principles. A practitioner who was a three principles practitioner in the UK. She was a massage therapist as well, and that's when I started to get a little bit more interested. And then it's only really in the last couple of months that I've started reading the books and attending the webinars and things like that, and just getting much more interested in the principles now. It's kind of starting to make sense now a little bit. So yeah, at first I was just trying to get my head around what the hell is the principle, what's mind, and I think I was getting into an intellectual kind of they say a lot of people when they're new, they get into this intellectual understanding of what is mind, what is consciousness, and they're getting a bit baffled by it all. But this time round, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm trying not to get too much into the intellectual side, but just trying to experience it and feel it. And Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. I love the principles. It's amazing. I still have questions and there's still things that crop up in my mind and sometimes, but I guess it's, I guess that's people who've been around in the principle for years are still probably have questions and things cropping up and but yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and yeah, um, I actually have got your book. I haven't read it yet. I've got it on Audible. I'm so grateful it's on Audible because being blind, it's quite a few principles books are in Audible audio format, and your book's in there, which is amazing. I just haven't got round to reading it. I've got them all in the library. So yeah, and I do hope to try to attend some of your future webinars that you mentioned as well. Definitely.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. I always recommend to people to read and listen to Sid. Yeah. You want to go to the source. Um, and I'll just tell you this quick story. In 1985, everybody was reading Second Chance. That was the first book that Sid wrote, right? Second Chance. So I read the book like in one sitting. It's a small book. And I thought, well, that's an interesting book. I got nothing out of it. Then I ran into Dr. Pettit, who said, well, you got to read that book more than once. He recently said in a webinar that he's read that book 45 times and he still reads something new.
Wow.
And he still sees, that's the beauty of this. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. You could just keep seeing deeper and deeper. So I haven't read it numerous times, but I've probably read it about 3 or 4 times. And I forgot to mention, I also run something called Mystery School for people who are reading and listening to Sid. We do a Zoom meeting once a week to talk about the insights we're having, and it's kind of cool. Yeah. There's so much going on in the 3PGC world. So, yeah, thank you so much for everybody coming today. This has been really fun.
Yeah, thank you, Lori, and thank you everyone for being here. I put a couple of links into the chat. And of course, if you're listening later on the recording, they'll be in the description for you if you want to check out Lori's work and attend some of the webinars that she mentioned. Thank you so much, Lori. And this has been wonderful hanging out with everyone.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love these. Yeah, thank you for doing all this too. All your work stuff. Thanks so much.
Welcome. Enjoy the rest of your day wherever you may be.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.